The stars had always seemed peaceful to those who looked up from Earth. Children made wishes on them. Lovers held hands beneath them. Scientists studied them with wonder and curiosity. But Captain Marshall knew a truth that most humans would never understand. The stars were not peaceful. The galaxy was filled with hunters, and Earth had spent 2 centuries learning how to hide from them. Stood on the bridge of the Pale Wanderer, a research vessel that looked like it belonged in a museum rather than in space. The ship was old and slow, and it made strange noises whenever it changed direction. At least that was what it wanted everyone to believe. Placed his hands behind his back and watched the main with calm eyes. His crew moved around him with practiced ease. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Porter stood at his right side. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and steady hands. Nothing ever seemed to shake her confidence. She had served with for 11 years, and there was no one he trusted more in a crisis. "Captain," said Danny from the communications station. He was young and eager, and sometimes talked too fast when he was nervous. "Long-range sensors are picking up a massive energy signature near the outer planets. It matches the profile we have been waiting for." Nodded slowly. "How many ships?" Danny checked his readings twice before answering. 47 vessels, sir. One of them is enormous. The computer estimates it at nearly 4 kilometers in length." Lisa let out a quiet breath. "The Empire, they finally found us." They'd been conquering star systems for almost 100 years. They moved through the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in their path. Worlds that surrendered became slave colonies. Worlds that resisted became ash. Humanity had first detected their communications 2 centuries ago, and that discovery had changed everything about how Earth prepared for the future. Pressed a button on his chair. "All hands, this is the captain. We have confirmed contact with an alien fleet. Initiate Protocol Shepard. I repeat, initiate Protocol Shepard. This is not a drill." Throughout the ship, crew members who had pretended to be clumsy scientists transformed into the trained officers they truly were. Hidden systems came online. Secret compartments opened. The Pale Wanderer remained slow and awkward on the outside, but inside it was ready for whatever came next. The fleet emerged from hyperspace with terrifying precision. Their ships were dark and angular, designed to inspire fear in anyone who saw them. At the center of the formation floated their flagship, the Eternal Dominion. It was a vessel built for one purpose, and that purpose was conquest. High Commander X stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion and looked at the small blue planet on his. He was tall even by standards, with gray-scaled skin and eyes that burned like molten copper. He had personally overseen the subjugation of 6 worlds, and he expected this one to be the easiest yet. "Reports," he commanded. His tactical officer N studied the sensor data with careful attention. "The inhabitants call themselves humans, High Commander. They appear to be a young species, barely capable of traveling within their own star system. Their technology is primitive. Chemical propulsion rockets, basic orbital stations. No evidence of military capability beyond simple projectile weapons." X allowed himself a thin smile. Another world of primitives waiting to serve the Empire. Open a channel. The transmission was broadcast across all frequencies. Every human ship and station received the message at the same moment. The alien commander's voice was cold and without mercy. "Inhabitants of the 3rd planet, I am High Commander X of the Empire. Your world now falls under our authority. You will submit to inspection and accept our terms of vassalage. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your population centers. You have 1 hour to respond." On the lunar base that served as the headquarters for United Earth Command, Admiral listened to the message with an expression that revealed nothing. She was 63 years old with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had spent her entire career preparing for this exact scenario. Her command center was filled with officers who looked nervous but determined. They had trained for years in simulations. They had studied every piece of intelligence about the Empire. They knew their enemy better than their enemy could possibly imagine. Admiral opened a secure channel to every hidden asset in the solar system. Her voice was calm and steady. All Shepard units, this is command. Maintain cover. Proceed with planned response. Let them see exactly what they expect to see. On the Pale Wanderer received the orders and passed them along to his crew. You heard the Admiral. Time to put on a show. The human response to the ultimatum was exactly what X expected. Panic transmissions flooded the airwaves. Government officials begged for mercy. Civilians cried out in fear. Ships tried to flee and crashed into each other in their desperation. It was chaos, pure and simple, and it confirmed everything they believed about primitive species. What X did not know was that every transmission was scripted. Every panicked voice was an actor. Every collision was staged. Humanity was performing the greatest deception in the history of the galaxy. Ambassador Cole was chosen to lead the diplomatic delegation. He was a middle-aged man with gray at his temples and a gentle manner that made people trust him. He had spent 20 years in the diplomatic corps, and he was very good at making others believe exactly what he wanted them to believe. He boarded a shuttle that was deliberately old and cramped. The shuttle experienced 2 malfunctions during the journey to the flagship. The first time, an engine cut out and the ship drifted helplessly for several minutes. The second time, the navigation system failed and the shuttle nearly crashed into a piece of space debris. The officers who watched the approach laughed among themselves at the pathetic display. Cole walked through the corridors of the Eternal Dominion with his head bowed and his shoulders slumped. He was accompanied by Commander Tors, who played the role of a frightened military advisor with no real power. They both knew their parts perfectly. High Commander X received them in his throne room, a vast chamber decorated with the trophies of conquered worlds. Weapons and artifacts and even preserved specimens from dozens of species lined the walls. It was designed to intimidate visitors and remind them of the Empire's unstoppable power. Cole looked around the room with what appeared to be genuine terror. Inside, he was counting the guards and memorizing the layout of the ship. "Welcome, Ambassador," X said with cold amusement. "I trust your journey was comfortable." Swallowed nervously. "We are honored by your invitation, High Commander. Earth wishes only for peace." X leaned forward on his throne. "Peace is simple to achieve. Submit to the Empire and your people will live. Resist and they will die. The choice is yours." Nodded quickly. "We understand completely. Earth has no military fleet, no weapons capable of challenging your magnificent vessels. We are a peaceful species. We accept your authority." The words hung in the air between them. X studied the human ambassador with satisfaction. This was going to be the easiest conquest of his career. Behind, Commander Tors kept her expression carefully blank. She had served aboard vessels that could destroy the Eternal Dominion in minutes. She had trained with weapons that they could not even imagine, and she knew that the time for hiding was almost over. The negotiations aboard the Eternal Dominion lasted for 6 hours. High Commander X enjoyed every moment of them. He sat on his throne and dictated terms while the human delegation nodded and agreed to everything he demanded. It was almost too easy, and that made the victory even. Ambassador Cole kept his head bowed throughout the proceedings. He wrote down every condition on a small tablet with trembling hands. Beside him, Commander Tors stood silently with her arms crossed, playing the role of a defeated soldier who had no cards left to play. "Earth will surrender 70% of all mineral resources," X declared. "Your population will provide labor forces for our mining operations across the sector. 15 million humans will be transported to our colony worlds within the first year." His voice was barely above a whisper. "We understand, High Commander. Your orbital infrastructure will be dismantled and rebuilt according to our specifications. All scientific research will be shared with the Empire. Any attempt to develop weapons technology will be punished severely. Yes, High Commander. X leaned back in his throne with satisfaction. The other members of his command staff exchanged pleased glances. This conquest would bring them great honor and significant resources. The humans possessed a world rich in water and metals, exactly the kind of prize that made careers in the military. But one officer was not celebrating. N, the tactical specialist, studied his sensor readings with growing concern. Something about the data bothered him, though he could not identify exactly what it was. "High Commander," he said carefully, "may I approach?" X waved a clawed hand. "Speak." N moved closer to the throne and lowered his voice. "Our deep-range sensors have detected unusual gravitational readings near the outer planets, specifically around the fourth and fifth planets and several of their moons." The High Commander frowned. Gravitational anomalies are common in young star systems. The planets here are still settling into their orbits. "Perhaps," N admitted, "but the readings are consistent with large masses hidden beneath the surface of various moons. The signature near the ice moon of the fifth planet is particularly strange. It suggests something artificial." X considered this for a moment, then dismissed it with a shake of his head. "You are being paranoid, N. Look at these creatures. They can barely keep their own shuttles from crashing. Do you really believe they are hiding something significant from us?" N wanted to argue further, but he knew better than to push the High Commander too hard. He returned to his station and continued monitoring the sensor data. Something was wrong with this picture, but he could not prove it. The human delegation departed with heads bowed and shoulders slumped. Their shuttle experienced another malfunction during the return journey, drifting in space for nearly an hour before the crew managed to restore power. Observers watched the struggle with contempt and amusement. Once the shuttle was safely away from the alien fleet, Cole straightened in his seat and allowed himself a small smile. Commander Torres laughed quietly beside him. "70% of our resources," said with mock concern. "However will we manage?" Shook her head. "They have no idea what they are dealing with. I almost feel sorry for them." "Almost," agreed. "But then I remember the 17 star systems they have conquered, the billions of lives they have destroyed, the species they have driven to extinction." His expression hardened. No mercy for those who show none. The shuttle continued its slow and clumsy journey back to Earth, but it was not heading for the planet itself. Instead, it changed course toward the moon, toward the hidden command center where Admiral was coordinating the greatest military operation in human history. On the lunar surface, deep beneath a crater that had never been officially explored, United Earth Command occupied a facility that spanned nearly 50 kilometers. Thousands of officers worked in shifts around the clock, monitoring every aspect of the deception that humanity had maintained for 200 years. Admiral met the diplomatic delegation in a briefing room lined with tactical displays. The screens showed the position of every vessel, every hidden human asset, and every possible scenario that might unfold in the coming hours. "Report," she commanded. Cole took his seat at the table and pulled up the terms they had demanded. "They want everything, Admiral. Resources, labor, technology, complete submission. They gave us 72 hours to comply." "Standard procedure," said Commander Alex Wright from across the table. He was the head of intelligence operations, and he had studied the Empire for decades. "They always give conquered worlds 3 days to organize the surrender. It makes the logistics easier." Admiral nodded slowly. "And it gives us exactly the time we need. What is the status of the Shepherd fleet?" A young officer named Miller pulled up a separate display. She was responsible for tracking every hidden vessel in the solar system. "All 437 ships are standing by, Admiral. Weapon systems are hot and crews are ready. The only thing keeping them hidden is our command. And the Sentinel's voice carried a note of pride. The Sentinel is fully operational. Chief Engineer Greg completed the final system checks an hour ago. She is ready to fly. The Sentinel was the crown jewel of humanity's hidden fleet. A 12 kilometers in length, armed with weapons that could crack planets and protected by shields that could withstand sustained bombardment from an entire enemy fleet. It had been built in secret over the course of 80 years, piece by piece, buried beneath the ice of Europa, where no alien scanner would ever think to look. Admiral studied the tactical displays in silence. She was calculating probabilities and considering variables. Every decision she made in the next few hours would determine the fate of her species and possibly the entire galaxy. "They believe we are helpless," she said finally. "They believe their technology is superior. They believe that conquering Earth will be as easy as all their other victories." She stood and walked to the main, which showed the alien fleet in orbit around the outer planets. "They are wrong. For 200 years we have watched them. We have studied their weapons, their tactics, their psychology. We have built a fleet designed specifically to counter their capabilities, and we have waited for the perfect moment to reveal ourselves." Commander Torres spoke up. "What about the other conquered species, Admiral? The whole 17 star systems. Billions of beings are living under their control." Admiral turned to face her officers. "That is precisely why we waited. If we had revealed ourselves too early, they would have destroyed us before we were ready. But now we are strong enough not just to defend Earth, but to liberate those other worlds." She pressed a button on the main console, and the display changed. It now showed a complex battle plan that had been refined over generations. "In 48 hours, we will end the Shepherd Protocol. We will reveal our true fleet to thee and give them a single opportunity to withdraw peacefully. If they refuse, we will demonstrate exactly why humanity chose to hide." The officers around the table sat in tense silence. They had trained their entire lives for this moment. They had kept secrets from their own families. They had watched the galaxy believe that Earth was weak and helpless, and now they would show the universe who humanity really was. Captain Marshall received the briefing aboard the Pale Wanderer. His crew gathered around him as he explained what was coming. "In 2 days we stop pretending," he told them. "Everything we have practiced, everything we have prepared for, it all comes down to this. When the order comes, we drop the disguise and we fight." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Porter looked at the faces around her. These men and women had lived double lives for years. They had pretended to be scientists and researchers while secretly training for combat, and soon they would finally be able to show what they were truly capable of. "What happens if they do not back down?" asked Danny quietly. Met his eyes with a steady gaze. "Then we teach them what happens when you threaten the wrong planet." Countdown reached 0 at exactly midnight, Earth Standard Time. Admiral stood at the center of United Earth Command and watched the final seconds tick away. Around her, hundreds of officers sat at their stations with their fingers hovering over controls they had trained years to operate. The moment they had all been waiting for had finally arrived. "All stations report ready," announced Miller from her tactical console. Admiral took a deep breath. 2 centuries of preparation came down to this single moment. Generations of men and women had lived and died keeping humanity's secret. Scientists had developed impossible technologies in hidden facilities. Engineers had built a fleet in the shadows of moons and asteroids. Soldiers had trained for battles that they knew might never come. All of them had believed in a future where Earth would no longer need to hide. "Terminate Protocol Shepherd," the Admiral ordered. "All units, reveal yourselves." The signal went out across the solar system at the speed of light. Within seconds, every hidden human asset received the command that would change history. Captain Marshall stood on the bridge of the Pale Wanderer as the transformation began. Hull plates that had been designed to look old and corroded slid, aside to reveal gleaming armor underneath. Weapon ports emerged from what had appeared to be damaged cargo bays. The ship's main reactor, which had been running at less than 1% capacity, roared to life with its full power. "All systems coming online," reported Lieutenant Commander Lisa Porter. "Weapons are hot, shields are at full strength, engine output is nominal." Watched his as the clumsy research vessel became the deadly warship it had always been. "Signal the fleet. The Pale Wanderer is combat ready." Similar transformations were happening throughout the solar system. Near Mars, a cluster of mining platforms revealed themselves to be a squadron of heavy cruisers. In the asteroid belt, cargo transports shed their outer hulls and became destroyers bristling with missile batteries. Satellite networks that had drifted harmlessly for decades reconfigured into orbital defense platforms capable of raining fire on any enemy that approached Earth. But the most dramatic revelation was yet to come. On Europa, one of the frozen moons of Jupiter, the ice began to crack. Great fissures spread across the surface as something enormous stirred beneath. Plumes of vapor shot into the thin atmosphere as heat from massive engines melted the ancient ice that had concealed humanity's greatest secret. Commander Torres stood on the bridge of the USS Sentinel and felt the deck vibrate beneath her feet. She had served aboard this ship for 15 years, but she had never experienced anything like this. There was waking up from its long slumber. "All sections report ready for launch," said Chief Engineer Greg from his station. "Reactor output is climbing. Hull integrity is perfect. We are good to go, Commander." Gripped the railing in front of her and smiled. "Take us up, Chief. Slowly. Let them get a good look at what has been hiding under their noses." The Sentinel began to rise. 12 kilometers of advanced warship pushed through the ice of Europa like a whale breaching the surface of an ocean. Ice and debris fell away from its hull, revealing armor plating that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Weapon arrays that could target enemies at distances measured in light seconds emerged from armored housings. Shield generators that drew power from the ship's 3 fusion cores hummed with barely contained energy. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms began to sound. High Commander X was in his private quarters when the first warnings reached him. He rushed to the bridge with his robe still unfastened, pushing past startled officers who had never seen their commander in such a state. "Report," he shouted as he reached his throne. N's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "High Commander, we are detecting massive energy signatures across the entire star system. Hundreds of them. They are appearing everywhere." X stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Where there had been a handful of primitive human vessels, there were now hundreds of warships. Ships that matched designs in size and exceeded them in apparent capability. "This is impossible," he breathed. "Where did they come from?" "They were here all along," N replied. "They were hiding in plain sight. The research vessels, the mining platforms, the cargo ships, they were all disguised warships." The shifted to show the largest contact. X felt his blood run cold as he saw the Sentinel rising from the ice of Europa. The ship was enormous, far larger than his own flagship. Its hull was covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays and fighter bays. It was a vessel built for one purpose, and that purpose was war. "That ship," X said slowly, "it must be at least 12 kilometers long." 14.3 kilometers according to our sensors, N confirmed. "Its power output exceeds anything in our database. High Commander, that single vessel could engage our entire fleet." Around the flagship, the human fleet was forming up. Destroyers and cruisers and battleships took position in a sphere that completely surrounded the alien invaders. There was no escape vector, no gap in the formation. They were trapped. Admiral's transmission reached every ship in both fleets simultaneously. Her face appeared on across the solar system, calm and composed despite the historic nature of the moment. "High Commander X," she began, "I believe introductions are in order. I am Admiral of United Earth Command. You have made a significant error in judgment regarding our species." X struggled to regain his composure. "This changes nothing. The Empire commands hundreds of fleets. Even if you destroy us here, more will come. You cannot stand against our full might." "Perhaps," Admiral acknowledged. "But before you make any decisions, let me share some information that your intelligence services apparently missed." The split to show images and data that made X's heart sink. Humanity had been watching for 200 years. They had intercepted communications, studied technology, and analyzed tactics. They knew the location of every fleet, the strength of every garrison, and the weakness of every defensive position. "We have been preparing for this moment since before your grandfather was born, High Commander. We did not hide because we were afraid. We hid because we wanted to be ready. And now we are." Captain Marshall watched the transmission from his position at the outer edge of the human formation. His crew sat at their stations in focused silence. After years of pretending to be helpless, they were finally showing their true colors. "They must be terrified," Lisa Porter observed. They walked into what they thought was an easy conquest and found themselves surrounded by a fleet they never knew existed. Nodded slowly. "Imagine how they feel. They have spent a century believing they were the most powerful force in this part of the galaxy, and now they have discovered that a species they dismissed as primitive has been watching them all along." Danny looked up from his console. "Captain, we are receiving targeting data from the Sentinel. They want us to lock weapons on the Eternal Dominion's engine section." "Do it," ordered, "but do not fire unless we receive the command. We are giving them a chance to surrender." On the Sentinel, Commander Torres coordinated the targeting of the entire human fleet. 437 warships had weapons locked on the vessels. Every alien ship was covered by multiple targeting systems. If the order to fire came, the battle would last less than 5 minutes. "High Commander," Admiral continued, "you have two choices. You can order your fleet to stand down, surrender your weapons, and agree to negotiate terms for the liberation of all conquered species. Or you can fight, and we will demonstrate exactly why humanity chose to hide until we were ready." X gripped the arms of his throne so tightly that his claws left marks in the metal. His entire career, his entire understanding of the galaxy, had been shattered in a matter of minutes. The hunters had become the hunted. "You cannot defeat the entire empire," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We do not need to defeat your entire empire," Admiral replied. "We only need to defeat you. And when we do, every conquered species will know that they are not invincible. Your empire's power depends on fear, High Commander. Today, we end that fear forever." The standoff continued as both fleets waited for what would come next. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and every being in the solar system knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The silence stretched across the void between the two fleets. Minutes passed like hours as High Commander X stared at the tactical display that showed his complete defeat. Every escape route was blocked. Every weapon system on his ships was locked by multiple human targeting computers. One wrong move, and his entire fleet would be reduced to debris. N approached the throne carefully. "High Commander, our tactical analysis is complete. The human fleet possesses weapons technologies we have never encountered. Their ship-mounted energy weapons appear to bypass our shields entirely. Their missile systems carry warheads with yields that exceed our own by a factor of 12. If we engage them, we will be destroyed within 3 minutes." X said nothing. He continued to stare at where the massive form of the USS Sentinel hung in space like a promise of destruction. How had this happened? How had his people been so completely fooled? "The Empire will send reinforcements," he said finally. "When we do not report back, they will send more fleets." "Perhaps," N agreed carefully. "But those reinforcements will take months to arrive. And by then, the humans will have spread word of their true capabilities to every conquered species. The fear that holds our empire together will begin to crumble. On the Sentinel, Commander Torres monitored the situation with growing impatience. 6 hours had passed since the ultimatum was delivered. They had made no move to surrender, but they had also made no move to fight. They were frozen by indecision. "How long do we give them?" she asked. Admiral's voice came through the command channel. "As long as it takes. We are not here to destroy them, Commander. We are here to show them that conquest is no longer an option. If they surrender peacefully, we save lives on both sides." Chief Engineer Greg looked up from his console. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting unusual activity in the outer system. They may be trying to send a message to their empire." Admiral considered this. "Let them. By the time any reinforcements arrive, the situation will be resolved one way or another. And when those reinforcements see what happened here, they will think twice about continuing the fight." Captain Marshall sat in his command chair aboard the Pale Wanderer and watched the standoff continue. His crew had been at battle stations for hours, and the tension was beginning to wear on them. Danny kept checking his targeting displays, making tiny adjustments that served no real purpose. Lisa Porter paced the bridge like a caged animal. "Patience," told them. "This is a war of nerves now. They have to accept that their situation is hopeless. That takes time." "What if they decide to fight anyway?" Danny asked. "What if they would rather die than surrender?" "Thought about this carefully before answering. Then we will do what we must, but I do not think it will come to that. X is not a fanatic, he is a conqueror. Conquerors value their own survival above everything else. He will choose to live." On the Eternal Dominion, a different kind of discussion was taking place. X had summoned his senior officers to the bridge for an emergency council. The mood was grim and fearful. None of them had ever faced a situation like this. "We must fight," declared Commander, the chief weapons officer. "Surrender is unthinkable. The Empire will never accept it. We will be executed as cowards and traitors." "If we fight, we die in the next few minutes," N countered. "At least surrender gives us a chance to survive. Perhaps we can escape later. Perhaps we can find a way to warn the Empire." "There is no escaping these humans," said another officer quietly. "Did you not see how thoroughly they prepared? They have been watching us for 2 centuries. They knew we were coming before we even arrived. If we surrender, they will keep us under guard until they are ready to deal with the Empire." X raised a clawed hand for silence. The arguing officers fell quiet and turned to face their commander. He looked older than he had that morning, as if the weight of defeat had aged him decades in a matter of hours. "I have led you into a trap," he said slowly. "I was arrogant and blind. I looked at these humans and saw only weakness. I did not consider the possibility that their weakness was a mask." He paused and looked at each of his officers in turn. "I will not compound my error by leading you to meaningless deaths." Opened his mouth to protest, but X cut him off. "We will surrender. We will accept whatever terms the humans offer. And when we return to the Empire, we will tell them what we faced here. Perhaps our humiliation will save others from making the same mistake." The surrender message was transmitted 15 minutes later. Admiral received it with relief rather than triumph. She had not wanted a battle. She had wanted exactly this, a demonstration of strength that achieved its goals without bloodshed. "All ships stand down from combat status," she ordered. "Maintain formation but weapons on safe. Captain Marshall, Commander Torres, prepare boarding parties. We will take control of the vessels one at a time." The next several hours were tense but ultimately peaceful. Human Marines boarded each ship and secured their weapons systems. The alien crews were treated with respect but kept under close guard. Their surprise at this treatment was obvious. They had expected cruelty and received professionalism. Captain Marshall led the team that boarded the Eternal Dominion. He walked through the corridors of the alien flagship with his hand resting casually on his sidearm, but he had no expectation of using it. The fight had gone out of these. He found High Commander X waiting on the bridge. The alien leader had not moved from his throne, but he had removed his weapons and placed them on the deck beside him. "I am Captain Marshall of the Pale Wanderer," introduced himself. "You are now in the custody of United Earth Command." X looked at him with weary eyes. The Pale Wanderer, that pathetic vessel that could barely maintain orbit. "We are good at pretending," acknowledged. "It has kept us alive for a long time." "How?" X asked. "How did your species accomplish this? You were supposed to be primitives. Your technology should have been generations behind ours." Considered whether to answer. In the end, he decided that the truth might serve humanity better than secrecy at this point. "We intercepted your long-range communications 200 years ago. We learned that the galaxy was filled with predators like your empire. We knew that if we announced our existence, we would be conquered before we had a chance to defend ourselves." He paused and looked around the bridge of the alien flagship. "So we decided to hide. We continued to develop our technology in secret. We built our fleet in the shadows, inside moons and asteroids where no one would ever think to look. We made sure that anyone who observed us would see exactly what they expected to see. A primitive species barely capable of leaving their own planet." X absorbed this information slowly. "You deceived the entire galaxy." "We survived the entire galaxy," corrected. "There is a difference. Your empire has destroyed 17 civilizations. We watched and we learned. We saw what happens to species that reveal themselves too early." On the Sentinel, Commander Torres supervised the integration of prisoners into secure holding areas. The aliens were confused and frightened, but they were cooperating fully. The shock of their defeat had taken all resistance out of them. Chief Engineer Greg approached her with a data tablet. "Commander, we have completed our analysis of technology. Their weapons and shields are roughly equivalent to what we were using 50 years ago. Their propulsion systems are actually inferior to ours." Nodded slowly. "So we were right, hiding gave us time to surpass them." "By a significant margin," Greg confirmed. "If we had revealed ourselves when we first detected the Empire, we would have lost. But because we waited, we developed technology they cannot match." The news spread quickly through both fleets. The humans celebrated quietly, still professional despite their victory. They sat in their holding cells and contemplated a galaxy that had suddenly become much more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And on Earth, billions of people watched the news feeds in stunned amazement. They learned for the first time that their governments had been keeping secrets for 2 centuries. They learned that the clumsy space program they had mocked was actually a cover for the most advanced military fleet in the known galaxy. They learned that humanity had been preparing for this moment since before any of them were born. The initial anger faded quickly. As the full story emerged, most people understood why the secret had been kept. The galaxy was not the peaceful place they had imagined. It was filled with empires like the, always searching for new worlds to conquer. Secrecy had not been deception for its own sake. It had been survival. Admiral addressed the planet that evening. Her face appeared on every screen in every home, across every continent. "Citizens of Earth," she began, "today we revealed ourselves to the galaxy. For 200 years we have prepared for this moment. We have built a fleet, developed technologies, and trained generations of soldiers. We did this in secret because we had no other choice. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and we were not ready to face it." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "Now we are ready, and we will never hide again." The treaty was signed 3 days after the surrender. Ambassador Cole handled the negotiations aboard the USS Sentinel in a conference room that overlooked the stars. High Commander X sat across from him with the broken pride of a defeated warrior. The terms were harsh but fair. They had to be. The galaxy was watching. The Empire will release all conquered species within its territory, read from the final document. Reparations will be paid to affected worlds according to a schedule determined by the newly established Galactic Council. Military expansion beyond current borders is permanently prohibited. X signed each provision with a clawed hand that trembled slightly. He had conquered worlds and destroyed civilizations. Now he was putting his name to the document that ended his empire's reign of terror. "You realize that the Empire will not accept this," he said quietly. "When word reaches home, there will be those who demand revenge." Nodded. "We are counting on it. When your fleets come to challenge us, we will defeat them. And with each defeat, the species you have conquered will grow bolder. They will see that they can be beaten. They will begin to resist. Your empire will crumble from within while we press from without." "You have thought of everything." "We have had 200 years to think," replied. "That is a long time to plan." Commander Tors watched the signing ceremony from the back of the room. She had spent her entire career preparing for a war that was over before it truly began. Part of her felt disappointed that there had been no real battle, but a larger part was relieved. She had seen the projections of what a fight would have cost both sides. Victory without bloodshed was the best possible outcome. After the ceremony, she found Captain Marshall standing at an observation window. He was looking out at the stars with an expression she could not quite read. "You seem thoughtful," she said. Turned to face her. "I am thinking about what comes next. For 2 centuries, our entire civilization was focused on one goal: hide, prepare, survive. Now that goal has been achieved. What do we do with ourselves?" Considered the question. "We build something better. We help the species the conquered. We establish the Galactic Council and create a system where might does not make right. We become the guardians we pretended we could never be." "That sounds like a lot of work." "It is," agreed, "but it is good work, the kind of work worth doing." On Earth, the celebrations continued for weeks. People danced in the streets of every city. They waved flags and sang songs and embraced strangers as if they were family. The fear that humanity had carried for so long, the knowledge that somewhere out there were predators waiting to find them, had been replaced by something new: pride, confidence, hope. Admiral gave interviews to media outlets from around the world. She explained the history of the Shepherd Protocol, the construction of the Hidden Fleet, and the generations of soldiers who had kept the secret. She spoke of sacrifice and patience, and the determination to survive no matter what the cost. "Were we right to deceive our own people?" a reporter asked her during one interview. The Admiral thought carefully before answering. "We did what we believed was necessary. The secret could not be kept by only a few. Hundreds of thousands of people knew the truth over the years. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, politicians. Any one of them could have revealed everything, but none of them did. They understood the stakes and they chose to protect humanity." "Do you regret anything?" "I regret that it was necessary," she said. "I wish we had lived in a galaxy where hiding was not the only way to survive, but we did not choose the galaxy we were born into. We only chose how to respond to it." On the Eternal Dominion, which remained in Earth orbit under human control, N requested a private meeting with Captain Marshall. The alien tactical officer had been cooperative during the transition and was curious what he wanted to discuss. They met in a small conference room that had once been used for war councils. N sat across from with his hands folded on the table. "I must understand," the alien said. "How long has your species truly been capable of challenging us?" Considered how much to reveal. In the end, he decided that honesty was the best policy now that the conflict was over. "We launched our first experimental faster-than-light probe in 1987 by your calendar. Our first extrasolar colony was established in 2031. By the time your empire first noticed Earth, we had already mapped half the galaxy." N's eyes widened with shock. Then you were never primitives at all. Everything we observed was false. Not false, selective. We showed you what we wanted you to see. Old rockets and struggling satellites and scientists who could barely keep their equipment running. It was a performance designed to make you underestimate us. But why? N asked. If you were so advanced, why not announce yourselves? Why not join the galactic community as equals? Leaned back in his chair. Because we watched the Empire destroy civilization after civilization. We saw what happens to species that reveal their strength too early. They become targets. Conquerors come for them before they are ready to defend themselves. He paused and met the alien's eyes directly. So we became invisible. We built our strength in silence and we waited. We knew that someday you would come for us. And when you did, we wanted to be ready. Not just ready to defend ourselves, but ready to end your empire's threat to the entire galaxy. N absorbed this information slowly. His entire understanding of humans had been shattered over the past few days. He had dismissed them as primitives. Now he knew that they were perhaps the most sophisticated strategists the galaxy had ever seen. What will happen to us? He asked finally. To the prisoners, to me. You will be released eventually, told him. Once we are confident that the Empire has accepted the new order. Some of you may choose to stay in human space. Others will return home. We are not interested in vengeance, N. We are interested in peace. The Empire will never truly accept peace. There are those who will always seek to restore our former glory. Then we will defeat them again, said simply, as many times as necessary, and eventually even the most stubborn among your people will understand that the age of conquest is over. N nodded slowly. He had much to think about. The weeks that followed saw the beginning of a new era for the galaxy. Human ships ventured beyond the solar system for the first time in public. They carried diplomats and scientists and soldiers, spreading the word of what had happened at Earth. Species that had lived under oppression for generations heard the news and began to hope. On the distant world of, a species called the gathered in their capital city to watch the broadcast from Earth. They had been conquered by the 80 years ago. 3 generations had grown up knowing nothing but servitude. Now they saw footage of the mighty fleet surrounded and forced to surrender by vessels they had never seen before. The humans are offering alliance, announced their leader, an elderly female named In. They say they will help any species that wishes to resist the Empire. Can we trust them? Asked a younger voice from the crowd. In considered the question. They hid for 2 centuries rather than risk the lives of their people. They built a fleet in secret rather than provoke a war they could not win. And when they finally revealed themselves, they did so not to conquer but to liberate. She looked at the faces around her, faces that had known only fear and submission for so long. Yes, she said, I believe we can trust them, because they understand what it means to be prey, and they have chosen to protect others rather than become predators themselves. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Species that had given up hope began to dream of freedom again. The Empire, which had seemed invincible for so long, suddenly looked vulnerable. Cracks appeared in their control as conquered worlds grew restless. 6 months after the surrender, the Galactic Council held its first session. Representatives from 12 species gathered aboard a human space station in neutral territory. Admiral addressed them with words that would be remembered for generations. We come together today not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals. For too long, this galaxy has been ruled by those who believe that power gives them the right to dominate others. Today, we declare that this belief is wrong. She looked around the chamber at the diverse faces watching her. Humanity hid for 200 years because we had no choice, but we never lost sight of what we wanted to be. We wanted to be protectors, not predators, builders, not destroyers, and now we have the strength to make that vision a reality. Captain Marshall watched the broadcast from his quarters aboard the Pale Wanderer. The ship had been officially renamed the Guardian, though he still thought of it by its old name. Lisa Porter sat beside him, sharing the moment. "Do you think it will last?" she asked. "The peace, the council, all of it." Considered the question carefully. Nothing lasts forever. There will be challenges ahead, who refuse to accept defeat, other empires who see opportunity in the chaos, species who hold grudges for what was done to them. He paused and smiled slightly. "But I believe that what we started here will endure. Not because humans are special, but because we proved something important. We proved that a species can be strong without being cruel, that power does not require domination, that the galaxy can be better than it has been." Lisa nodded and looked out at the stars. The same stars that humanity had watched for thousands of years, dreaming of what might be out there. Now they knew the answer, and they were ready to face it. The age of hiding was over. The age of guardianship had begun. And somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between the stars, other young species were looking up at the sky and wondering if they were alone. They were not alone, and thanks to humanity, they never would be again.